Hey, thank you so much. Today we are here with Sam Robertson. Sam is a producer slash director. He just finished his first feature film out there in Los Angeles, and we're going to talk to him and get to know a little bit more about him and his experience. Sam, what's up?
Yo, Renee, what's going on, man?
Hey, man, it's been a couple of years since we actually seen each other since COVID.
Right. Yeah, man, it's good to see you, man.
Yeah, likewise. And since then, you finished your feature film. I remember reading your script a few years back.
Yeah, when we were at AFI, man, that was a portfolio project.
Yeah, and you got it made. You got your feature film made. That's awesome, man. Congratulations.
Word, thank you, bro.
So talk to us a little bit about that. Why don't we share with the audience a little bit about who you are and how you got into film?
Okay.
Let's go from there.
Word, yeah. So, my name's Sam Robertson from Los Angeles, California. I met Renee at AFI in the producing program. So, him and I go way back, been on many sets, working on a bunch of different crews, producing films. Before AFI, I was studying film at Morehouse College. And, before that, I was just running around as a high schooler with a camera, like making my own little commercials for like bikes and stuff, like my own bike in my garage and a little like Batman skits and stuff like that. I've been like making film, I guess, since I was a member at the Challenges Boys and Girls Club. I think that's where it started for me in middle school. And been kind of pursuing that since then. But I mean, I got into filmmaking because I wanted to make animation, like cartoons and stuff. Do you remember like those conversations we would have, like walking down? We were walking down Los Feliz, man, like after school, and just like brainstorming, man. And so I'm still definitely pushing forward on that. So that's really important to me. But live action definitely took like center stage when we got to AFI. So that's been my primary focus since then.
Yeah, I do remember. You're always inspired to do animation, and man, I remember those walks. It'd be like, I don't know, sunset. We'd go over to Los Feliz and kind of like just walk down there and just start walking into the Hollywood Hills.
Right, yeah.
We just walk,
just getting inspired. Yeah, man.
Yeah, just getting inspired and having conversations about what we're trying to accomplish, how we can accomplish it.
Yeah, bro.
Motivate each other, man. Because being a producer, it's you got to have a strong sense of self and a lot of belief in yourself, man. Because ain't nobody feeling sorry for you, and
right. Definitely, no one cares.
Yeah, nobody cares about how you feel, man. But still, at the end of the day, you got to deliver on time and on budget.
Yeah, you said it, man. You said it. That's it right there. Yeah.
But right on. So you obviously you were inspired. You recognized right away when you were young, and you pursued it into college, going to Morehouse, and then heading off into the AFI. Was it difficult to get into the AFI?
I would say so. My fault. Let me just turn down the heat real quick. I had like this funny story that Neil and I share. Because when I first met him, we were like laughing about it because he was like, he asked me like what
Neil Canton.
Neil Canton, who's for those viewers that don't know, he was like the head of the producing program when Renee and I were there, and he one of his top credits was he was a producer on Back to the Future, so he's that guy. He was asking me like, "Yo, where else did I apply?" And I was like, "I applied to USC." Because I didn't think I would be good enough to get into AFI. And he was like, all right, yeah, good answer. So him and I like always laugh about that. Because like I was like researching AFI. I was like, dang, man, like, I was like 22 years old. And I was like, man, these dudes are like, like this is like next level, you know what I'm saying? Because it's like, when you get there, it's like a cut below like professional filmmaking in terms of like the way things are run there. It's like a real like studio system. And for a second, I was like intimidated. But then when USC rejected me, I was like, man, like I don't have anything to lose at this point. So when I applied to AFI, like I met Betsy and Neil, and I just kind of like was really honest with them and transparent. And so I got in, man. And I would say being there was definitely difficult. Going through the cycle process and through thesis and all the elements that come with that. That was definitely difficult, but also rewarding at the same time.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't a walk in the park for sure.
Yeah.
110%. So yeah, thanks for sharing that, Sam, talking to us a little bit about, getting into AFI. But now that we're in AFI, what's really interesting about your story is that when you were at AFI, you actually, let's see, you got to kind of paint this picture to provide context. So at the AFI, you produced 3 short films for your first year.
Mm-hmm.
Then after that, you produce your second year, you produce a thesis film. So within the idea is to make 3 films as practice, gearing you up for your thesis film, which is what you take into the world to demonstrate who you are and what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
So Sam had the opportunity to connect and collaborate with other AFI fellows, and he actually not only was a producer, but was one very few, I don't remember how many exactly, but I know it wasn't many, that actually had a script that he wrote that ultimately became film, which is an option, but it's very rare to have a producer and a writer. Usually you partner with a writer, which ultimately became a thesis film, Where the Water Runs, which is an amazing film. It kind of reminds me a bit of like a little bit of how would we say this? It's got like a Chinatown vibe. The script itself has a Chinatown vibe, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, taken into a thesis, and ultimately taking that thesis into a feature film idea, but it evolved into no, it didn't go into a feature film idea. Actually, it was your thesis, and then you had another idea that you developed into a feature film, and then ultimately you produced it last year into a feature film on a very, very tight budget, and you directed it.
Yeah, man.
So you've been after it, Sammy. So talk to us about that process, man. Totally want to learn and understand and share with the audience, man. Like that is a lot. That is, and for you to be able to be at a place where you can produce and write, that's a blessing to be at the AFI to make that happen. And talk to us about like what you've learned and what was good and what wasn't good. So break it down for us.
Word, man. Should I start from the AFI?
Yeah, man. I think because it's okay. Your story is so tight, right? So why don't you start from like, let it off the cuff, man. Tell us how you really feel. When you came into the AFI, your first cycle. Who was that with? Was it with the boys?
My first cycle was with Andrew Boylan and Luke, and we did this film called 10 Minutes with Tom. It's about this introvert dude that had a crush on this girl who like ran the video store where he'll go and like rent films that he liked, like Harold and Maude and like awkward films like that, kind of like reflective of like who he was on a personal level. And that experience was like really where I saw how a producer can influence a story creatively. Because like for example, there was a point we were probably like 2 weeks out from shooting, and in the script, like the Tom was this dude who his love interest worked at the pharmacy, was a pharmacist, because the setup was like he would go there, he would get his medicine, and then like he would have this awkward encounter with this girl there. And I'm like trying to, location scout, but what was the cycle one budget? Like 4,500 or something like that, maybe 3,500.
Yeah, something like that. I remember they gave us a little more of that one because it was a 4-day.
Because cycle one was like the easier one.
Yeah, because they gave you one more day and a little more money.
Yeah, exactly. So like it had this whole angle, like this dude was like this medicated dude who was dealing with like these psychological or emotional problems. And I remember just like sitting in the bay and we're like cutting our previs like storyboard and like talking about the story. And I'm like, yo, like if this guy is on medication all the time, like I think the audience is gonna think that we're trying to tell them, like it's gonna take us off course basically. And so I was like just doing research on locations, and I found this video store. I'm like, hold on, what if instead of her working as a pharmacist, then she worked at the video store, because he's already a dude who is like explicitly into movies, and like we're emphasizing that he likes to watch movies. So the video store came into play, and it was only like what $200 a day. And so on a 4-day shoot, that was like, hey man, like that was a pretty big deal. And when I pitched that idea to the group, like it definitely like changed not only the story but how they perceive me as a producer. They're like, oh wow, like this is where the creative and the logistics meet, is with the producer. And from that point on, like the shoot, it was what it was, but the film came out pretty decent. So that's where it started for me for Cycle 1. And then moving forward, I had an idea that I was thinking of in undergrad about, like the Flint water crisis that had started happening when I was still in college. And so I just brought that idea into Cycle 3 and co-wrote the script with Milo. And that's kind of like where it started, because I had that confidence to be like, okay, like as a producer, I can still contribute creatively with also the expertise to supplement for all like the narrative elements. Like as a producer, like how much things are going to cost, how much time things are going to take. So if you know those things, then you can influence the narrative in a totally different way, like nobody else on set can. So I felt empowered going into Cycle 3, writing that script. And it was pretty well received by the school. Like we definitely learned a lot in terms of like narrative storytelling and everything.
It was very well received. I mean, I loved the film a lot.
Word, thank you, man. Narrative workshop, man.
Yeah.
that was like a really special time, man. I'm never gonna forget those days. I think that definitely sharpened like our awareness as filmmakers in terms of like what the audience experience is like. And so yeah, from Cycle 3, we kept the same crew, the same principal team, and then went into Thesis with the same basically the same story, just with more money and more time.
Right.
Was able to make a bigger film. Yeah. After that, so it's like this confidence kept just kind of like building on itself. It's like, all right, well, I can keep contributing in this creative way. And I was already writing. So my portfolio project became like another opportunity to be creative, and also, use my expertise as a producer to execute it. And so I wrote a script that I guess the original budget for it was about $5 million. And, we got it optioned at the beginning of 2020, like right before COVID hit. And for a few months, like it was looking really good. Like agencies were getting their hands on it. They were like offering, they're sending us actors and actresses that were available to be in it. But then when the lockdown happened, a lot of things kind of were put on the shelf, and we ended up pulling out of that deal. And I was talking to George, man. George put me on. Shout out to George Horton. He put me on this book. Yeah, he put me on this book by Robert Rodriguez called "Rebel Without a Crew." And Robert Rodriguez shot, his first film, El Mariachi, for what was it? It was $7,000. And what year was that?
That was
must have been 91.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Just right here, based in his town, man.
Yeah. That's his place right there in Texas, man. Yeah.
His studio is just like right up here, man. And shout out, right on. That inspired you, right on.
Man, absolutely, Doug. That was like the first book I read in a day. Like I couldn't put it down. Like I was like, I had to see like what happened with it because in the book he basically documents every step from the conception to delivery, and he shot it for 7 grand. He was like in Mexico, and he shot on film, and it was in the '90s. So I'm like thinking about
Shot on film too. Wow.
yeah, he was shooting and he was saying he was cutting it while he was like in the camera. Basically, like, he had to shoot it in sequence and had to record dialogue after they got the visual. It was wild. Like he was just thugging, man. Like he said he was using wheelchairs as dollies. Like he would have somebody sitting with a camera and they would just put him in a wheelchair and he was like pushing them. And so it's like stuff like that that makes you like really kind of think about just like being an artist, man, and like not waiting for people to give you permission to be one. Um, and also just I was thinking, I was like, yo, if he could do that in 91, 7 grand, like, we can definitely do it nowadays, like with all the technology that we have access to. And when we did like the math for, what was 7 grand worth back then, like what is that worth now? And it was like roughly like 15,000. So we were like, all right, like if we get 15,000, we can make a movie, man. And so like that was like literally like the target. It was like that's all we need, bro. And like, I'm thinking that like thinking about cycle film production and thinking like, yo, we did a lot on like 4,500. We did a lot for like 3,500. Or even like the thesis projects, like some people were coming out with like 70 grand, 90 grand. And so I was like, if we can just get enough, like, if we could just have what Robert Rodriguez had, we'll be solid. So ended up raising 20 grand and used 16 grand for production. So kind of basically like the same like ballpark. Shot for 16,000 and spent the rest of it on a computer and a hard drive for me to cut it on. Yeah, shot for 10 days, man, and got it done, man. That was, just guerrilla style filmmaking, man.
Congratulations, Sammy, man. Just to be able to go out there and make it happen, get it in the can, that's one of the most difficult things. And, next question is, okay, you got it in the can, man. And of course, this is not like a magnum opus. You're not trying to, it's essentially letting people know, look what I was able to do. I'm not waiting for permission.
Right.
Just imagine what I can do. What else I can do, right? It's
right.
You're putting yourself out there, man. And I got a chance to see the cut, man. Thank you for sharing it with me. It was beautiful.
Word. Hey, thanks for checking it out, bro. For real.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
So with that being said, now that you got the film made, what's your next steps with it? What are you thinking that you're gonna do?
Well, there are some people that are already like. So we're gonna do the festival approach, but also try to see if we can sell it in a domestic or international market. Festivals are always cool because you can go there as a nobody and leave as somebody, and so we're trying to see about primarily like international festivals for this because like the whole style of it is not like what you usually see in domestic films. So we're kind of thinking, like international audience might be more receptive to it. But at the same time, like we're not like closing ourselves off to any options, here in America. So there's the festivals and also, like George and Ryan, they hit me up. They're like, hey, if you guys need like contacts with any sales agents, like let me know. There are some other like industry folks that we are connected to that are just waiting for the cut to be done and to send it to them and see like where that goes. I'm also like seeing if I need to get an agent or a manager or something. I'm still like a novice at this point in terms of like breaking into the industry and seeing what's possible. I guess the best thing that David and I have been focused on is just having something to bring to the table, like something that says like, all right, like we do this and we can work at a high level. So I think that's like our main asset, and that's kind of like what I'm focusing on is tightening up this cut as much as possible, and just making that 20 grand shine, man. Like that's the priority right now.
I love that. Make that 20 grand shine. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, you already know, Renee, man. Like you already know, man. You already know. So uh definitely a huge learning experience. So overall.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, man. Can you tell us a little bit about, what you learned, your trials and tribulations that you faced on making this?
Yeah. Yeah, man. There's something crazy I heard when we were in grad school. It was like as filmmakers, like you don't get to watch a movie, you get to make it. And that's definitely true because you see like all the good, and I mean you see all the bad. Like when you get like all the raw footage, you're just like, yo, this is the movie. I still have like a whole nother movie to make, even though the footage is done. But I say that to say that like I've it's been like a lot of ups and downs, man. It was great to be able to shoot. Being on set was really exciting every day. It was definitely difficult, you know what I'm saying? Like on a 20 grand budget, your crew is very small. I mean, we had, Derek Matarangas, he was our cinematographer. He did a great job, but he was just by himself. So it was a lot of work for him to have to like. There's times where he would be, holding the camera and then like Hollywood and some like bounce board like off to the side at the same time. There are times where I had to dress up, certain sets and also dress the actors in costume and then rehearse with them and then we shoot. And so like your mind is kind of like split in like a lot of different ways. Like, all right, yeah, this is like you're like a production designer for half an hour and then a costume designer for like another 45 minutes and then you're back to directing. But even when I'm directing, I'm like, what's up with that thing that's in the corner? Like your eyes go back to the production design or the costume design. So there's a lot of that happening. Money is always like a thing. If you got a lot of money, you can kind of throw money at your problems, and we didn't have the luxury of doing that. But I will say that, like, when you're in that position, it forces you to be more creative, and I think that was the upside because then I was able to get to certain points creatively that I don't think I would have if I had access to whatever it would have been that would have made whatever it was like easier. Um, and also, so that was just like principal photography. But when you get into post, when you're watching the footage, you're basically reliving all those moments that were occurring when you shot it. So I'm sitting there, I'm like hearing my voice, I'm hearing everybody else's voice. I'm like, damn, I remember that day, man, where like this thing was going wrong and that thing was going like this, and like it just. So it's kind of like depressing, man. Like we're sitting here, like I've sat in this room like some nights, and I'll just have to stop cutting, man. Just like just having to kind of reconcile with those emotions that I was dealing with while shooting it, and. I guess I probably felt that before, but not to like this extent. Having to cut like a whole feature on my own. That was because you don't miss anything, man. Like, and then, but I had to train myself to be like, all right, don't worry about the stuff that you don't like. Like, not doesn't matter if these actors are professional or if the lenses that you wanted aren't there, and so like the look is different, or um, whatever the case is. Like, I like learned to divorce myself from the negativity and just focus on like, all right, how do we make this the best project as possible? And by way of thinking like that, then the whole experience is like enriching and it's fun. Like there are moments where I'm sitting here cutting and I'm like, oh man, yeah, this is gonna be hard, man. The audience gonna like that. And it's like that's like what filmmakers get is like you get to make it, you know what I'm saying? Like you get to have those moments where you like celebrate making it. But you don't get to watch it because like when you're watching it, you just think about those moments of making it. So, yeah, that's kind of like the experience in a nutshell.
Making that 20,000 shine.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Making that 20,000 shine, man. No, yeah. And that's good. You take time to understand and reflect. Like, I need to process this because, like, you're literally energetically and emotionally, you are brought back to that moment.
Yeah.
It's like, it, it's a really dark night of the soul moments where you're like,
Seriously, man. You think about what you're thinking. You're thinking about like what got you to that point. Like you're thinking about like all that stuff, man. And it can kind of like handicap you. It kind of like paralyzing sometimes because like you can be afraid of how other people will receive the work. You can second guess like the decisions along the way. So there are times where I'll be working and I'm like, yeah, let me just take a break. I won't do anything on it for like a couple of days. And then when I come back to it with like fresher eyes, then I can see, like a different perspective or um, what I've usually done. What's helped me is I would take a break and I'll watch other stuff. I'll watch film. I was for like a couple months, I was just watching films from like the 70s and I was watching a lot of anime. And it kind of like unlocks your brain to think like, oh wow, I can do that, even though people haven't seen really that in like 40 years, or I can cut it like this, even though that's like kind of different. But you see how it's effective in other projects, and you see how it can apply to yours, and kind of re-inspires you and motivates you to try new things. And um, yeah, I'm at the point where I'm just like on every project that I work on, I just want to try to push the art forward. Like if I actually want to be trying new things and challenging myself to do new things. So I think it's all for a reason, man. Yeah, all the ups and downs for a reason.
yeah, for sure, Sammy. No, man, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I agree. I feel like as a storyteller, kind of just want to find that edge and just kind of like just go a little bit further past that edge so that way you're just challenging yourself
Hmm.
and you're growing, and I think that's really important. But thanks for sharing that, man. I know it's like putting your heart out there talking about your film right now. It's not even finished yet. You got a rough cut out. How long have you, or how much time have you given yourself to edit this?
Um, well, we finished shooting in about March or April of last year, and so I just did like a preliminary assembly like a month after. I was like really excited to get into like cutting it, but then I started looking at the footage. And because on set, like I didn't have like I wasn't on monitor. You couldn't like we just couldn't afford for all of us to be on monitor to be able to see playback in terms of like having the time to rewatch takes. There are many scenes that we had. I mean, Renee, you saw the film. The whole style was like it was like every scene was like one shot, and like there are many times where we only had one opportunity to get something. And so when I did the assembly, I'm looking at this thing like, damn, man.
Got another take.
Yeah, I'm like, dog, this is all I had. And so that really kind of hit me hard because David and I did the assembly and he was like, how do you feel, man? What do you think? I was like, I don't know, man. And so he came over to the office and we were just like sitting here watching it. I don't think we got through the whole thing. We just stopped it like midway and we're like, we cannot make the movie in this way, like in the way that it was assembled. And so for a second, I was like, man, we're kind of. It's hard to admit, but like it's like I guess it is like a lot of. I've discovered that there is like a lot of overcoming, like facing like fear and doubt in this process of like making art. As a producer, usually like you're on the front line, but it's like, hey, like if the movie gets done, if I deliver, like I did my job. You know what I'm saying? So as like the director or as a writer, when you're like making a film, it's like you want it to be good. You want it to be like those other things. Like yeah, it got made, but like you actually want it to be like something that people can sink their teeth into. And we didn't feel like we had that on that first assembly. So we were like, you know what, like just why don't you just cut like a trailer of it, and then we'll use that to raise more money, and then we'll reshoot the whole joint. And so, like that whole summer, I was just cutting trailers, man. I was like trying out different times. You know, it should be like 3 minutes. Doesn't need to be 2 minutes. Do we need to just have like a couple 30-second clips or whatever? And like, you know, I was spending months like trying to find the right music and all that kind of stuff. And so that took me up until about like September, trying out a trailer. And then, you know, I don't know what brought me back to Robert Rodriguez and like the book, and I was like watching his interviews, and you know, him and Tarantino are like buddies. They came out at the same time, and they were like talking about their experiences. Because I didn't know Tarantino actually did the same thing with his first film before Reservoir Dogs and before he sold his first script. He shot a film for 14 grand, and he only shot on the weekends. Had a whole movie, but like when you did the assembly, he was like, hell no, this is trash, and like never put it out. And so he just stuck to writing at that time. And when I heard that, I was like, I just kept thinking, and I told David, I was like, man, we have a movie. Like we had the footage like of a complete movie right now. We might as well just like try to cut like some version of it that is like we have a movie, you know what I'm saying? Like, and as a producer, it's like that's what you want to take to the market. So we just leaned into the footage that we had, and like I said earlier, like that was like around the time I was like watching these like old 70s movies and like movies from like a lot of foreign movies, and just kind of was being inspired to try something different with the edit. And so that from like September to December, around the time I sent you that first cut, that was like, you know, that was the kind of time that we were on. Yeah. And now we have a second cut done. So yeah, man, it's a lot better actually than that first one that you saw. But yeah, that's been pretty much a turnaround, man, and pretty much a whole year of posts and just like trying out things, researching different things. It was a lot more than what I expected, for sure.
So, what, like, from that whole experience, and it sounds like it's still evolving, right? Like, when we're in this pursuit. You never arrive. You just opportunity to continue to go, and created that opportunity, Sam. So that's awesome, man. You got a feature now in your pocket. Obviously, it's not a magnum opus or anything like that, but you went out, you did it. That says a lot. Now you have it in the can. Now you're trying to figure out like where does this live, if it even lives. Maybe you get the opportunity, like you said, to raise money from a trailer and go out and shoot some more, or have a reshoot, or
Mhm.
a lot of different things that I'm sure that you and your team are thinking about. But what's one of the biggest things that you could, like, a piece of advice that you learned from this, making this feature film? What's the one thing to give to somebody else and be like, all right, I went out there and I did this. This
Yeah,
from learning.
yeah, absolutely. I think for me is like the importance of independent thinking. Um, like when we first got to like start going through narrative workshop, I really discovered that like a lot of people are scared to do certain things, like kind of like afraid to say certain things, especially like writers, like because it's like when you're a filmmaker, it's kind of like you have a message, or you're like saying something, you're trying to say something or give something to the people, and a lot of people are afraid to do certain things just because of they want to be accepted by the group, or they want to be, I don't know, I guess they just want to kind of, it's a lot easier to not be like the stand, to not be like a sticking out like a sore thumb or whatever. And a lot of people before we started the process, they were saying that this was like it was impossible, that we shouldn't even try to do it, or they'll be sarcastic, like, oh yeah, well, good luck, like kind of wishing us to fail. And for a second, like it definitely like can, if you let it, it can keep you from doing whatever it is that you're trying to do. Um, but through this process, I kind of held on to this story that I heard was so there's the story that I heard was like there was if you could think back like long ago, there's these people that lived on an island, and you have the men that are like going out and they're fishing, and there's a guy that he can go and fish, and when he goes fishing he can catch enough fish for everybody in the village to have two each, and everybody's happy, like everybody appreciates him for that. It's a system that works. It's something that everybody's familiar with, um, and nobody has any problems with it. But then there's like another dude who sees the whole system at work, and he's like, "Word, okay, it's not bad, but there's this idea that I have about, I don't know, tying some leaves together and like making some kind of net or something like that, like something weird." You know what I'm saying? Like it's just all in his imagination. And then everybody in that process of him brainstorming and just building out the idea, people look at him like, "Yo, like that's dumb, that's useless, that's unfamiliar to us. So we don't know if that's gonna work." It's like all these things, all the reasons that are telling him not to do it. But then he makes his net, and then when he goes fishing now, he can catch 12 fish for every person. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So he goes from, because he had the courage to think independently from the group, he goes from, being hated and ignored to somebody who's like revered and who is appreciated because he contributed that independent thought to the group. And I just think like, yo, like as artists, like it's our job to be like the independent thinkers. Like we need to be the ones that are brave enough to say something different or do something different, because I mean, otherwise, then you're just gonna have a bunch of people doing the same things and saying the same things and talking about the same things and making films that all look the same. Like that's like if we went to a museum and we're looking at all these different painters and they're all the same. There's no like distinctive qualities about them, or and I think like without that, then humanity like ceases to continue to grow and evolve. And so I think that's what this process was taught me, was like just to lean into your own artistic instincts, and to just and it's okay to think independently. Like your work doesn't have to look like everybody else's. Like you don't have to try to fit in with everybody else. And like the cool part about it is like you could go ahead and try to just do like the regular formula that other people are doing, and you can go ahead and do that. But like what happens if you sacrifice your own independent thinking to try to fit in, and you try to do what they're telling you to do and they still don't accept you anyway? So I'm like, I might as well just do what I think. Um, and I'm not trying to say like what the art that we're making is just for us. Like, it's not for anybody else. But what we are saying is that we're like we said earlier, we're just trying to push the art forward. You know what I'm saying? And like we're just trying different things, and so I think that was like the main thing for me. Just think independently as artists. Don't let people just tell you what they think, because most of it is them projecting out of fear because they don't have the courage usually to like act on some of the knowledge that they have. Like I know that there are many filmmakers that know many more films than I do, and know many more filmmakers, and know a lot more of the technological aspects of it, but they don't have the courage to act on any of that info. And I'm like, well, what's the use of having all that information if you're not doing anything with it, if you're not you know um, building anything with it? So yeah, that was the main thing in a nutshell. I know I kind of talked a lot just now, but those are the ideas that really stuck with me.
No, Sam, that's great, man. That really, I mean, it resonates with me. I really understand what you're trying to say. Essentially, what it comes down to is being able to put yourself out there, put your heart out there,
Hmm.
following your instincts. Very difficult thing to do. To honestly express yourself, very difficult thing to do.
Hmm. Hmm.
But that is what you learn through this process, is always trying to honestly express yourself, regardless of comparing it to what we were taught in essence, since we both went to film school, what it should look like.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's, yeah, man, I agree with you 110%. Putting yourself out there and uh, worrying about what others may perceive of you, uh,
Hmm.
judge you, can hold you back. I think it was a quote that I heard. I don't remember who said it. It was really great. It was, your need for acceptance in this world will make you invisible.
Word, yeah. That's powerful, man. That's powerful. Because you can get accepted right into the group. You just become another number. You become nothing, like a nobody, and just you just follow the herd.
Yeah, exactly. But the fact that you're seeking and striving and working towards and trying to make the opportunity to honestly express yourself, which is a very difficult thing to do, makes you unique. And I think as an artist, at least for me, is the reason why I really enjoy filmmaking is because it's the only art that I know up to this point that I feel like I can honestly express myself through.
Hmm.
But it's a challenging thing, and it's a very difficult type of art, right? It's everything's included in it. You got sound, you got music, you got visuals, you got production design, you got color, you got
Hmm.
actors, all these things that we all put together and produce this piece of art. Not to mention the amount of money it takes and the amount of time.
Not to mention that, yeah, right.
Brother, thank you so much, Sam. Man, this was awesome, man. This was really great. Thanks for taking the time to explain. I'm definitely looking forward to having more conversations, see where this goes. Your film goes, and following your career. I know it's going to be bright.